Hello and welcome back to another Craig and Dave Unscripted. So today we're going to take the opportunity to have a look at some of our recent features we've released through Smart Revise. So obviously we try to release new features every month, and we've got a few exciting things we'd like to tell you about. But just before we do that, we're going to do a quick shout out. So a bit of apology for anyone who misinterpreted our last Unscripted. So in the last Unscripted, Dave mentioned how he was visiting Pate's Grammar School and had an unexpected, lovely surprise. You can go back and watch the video. About year 12 and 13 students welcoming him, and they'd written a card. Oh, beautiful moment, lovely. Unfortunately, it seems that has been misinterpreted, probably our fault, and we've received. Oh, we didn't realise you visited schools and you did talks, and we would really love to be able to visit lots of our schools, and it is something we've talked about in the past. But the reality is, unless you're very local to us, we just honestly we don't have the capacity to go and do school trips and visits, not at the moment anyway. But we received a lovely email from Junaid from Herschel Grammar School. And it was saying, oh, I didn't realize you visited schools. And this is lovely. I'm going to read this to you. I'm a year 12 student. I'm the leader of the school's Computer Science Society. The school has a large number of students who are extremely passionate about computer science. We've been watching your videos since GCSE. We've all moved on to A level. And it's what we were talking about last week. You know, it's lovely being able to instill a bit of that, you know, passion and excitement in teachers and students. I won't go on too much because that's really what last week's video is about. So I've apologized to Junaid via email saying, I'm sorry we misled you. We don't have the capacity to pop to schools and do personal visits. It was a pure coincidence. Dave was at Pate's Grammar School for a totally unrelated, and then got ambushed by year 12s and 13s. Thank you. But I have promised Junaid that we would do a shout out. So here it is. We are glad you reached out. I'm sorry we can't come and visit. But it's fantastic to hear that, you know, there's so many of you are loving the subject from GCSE to A level. And if we've been any part of that journey, you know, helping increase enthusiasm, then, you know, we feel, you know, incredibly grateful to have been able to do that. So thank you ever so much for reaching out. There's your shout out as promised. I'm sorry it's not an in-person visit. So let's switch to the main focus of today's video then, Dave. I'll let you launch off a bit of a kind of roadmap and new features we've released on Smart Revise.
Yeah, so we thought it would be a nice idea, maybe once a month, towards the end of the month, just to talk about some of the updates and things that have gone live in Smart Revise that, you know, you might miss if you're a busy teacher, and you might not even know about if you're a student and they are features specifically for teachers. And in addition to that, we'd just like to take the opportunity to talk about some of the things that we might be working on moving forward with the product, and not to sort of put the roadmap too far into the distance, because things are always subject to change, and we've chopped and changed a few priorities around this month as it happens. So we don't want to project too far ahead, but we do want to give you a sense of the things that we're working on, because Smart Revise is very much a work in progress, and it's one of those products that we don't really see as ever being finished. We're going to continue to add to the functionality, listen to the feedback that we're getting from students and teachers, take the ideas on board, and move forward together. Now, we're not going to be able to implement everything that everybody wants. Sometimes that's because of strategic decisions, and we're not trying to create the same product as things like Seneca, for example. And at the same time, we might have a bigger vision for something that you're proposing, and that will come later down the line as part of a bigger feature set. So there are some things that won't necessarily go into the product the way that you might think if you give us feedback, but we listen to everything, and there are certainly some things that have changed as a direct response from teachers and students, and that will continue into the future. So it's a new sort of feature, I think, for Unscripted. Once a month, we'll take a bit of a review on what we've been doing for the previous month and project a little bit forwards with you. So there we go. That's setting the scene then, Craig. So should we have a look at the roadmap?
Yeah. So people are aware, I'll take that URL off the screen, but you can visit this roadmap at any point at the address below there. So you can just pause that and take that down if you wish. I'll just take that banner off the screen for you.
Yeah, and that roadmap's updated once every couple of weeks or so when we've got something new to say and priorities change. So yeah, if you're a teacher and you're interested in the development of the product, then you can bookmark the roadmap and check in from time to time to see what we're up to. So anyway, let's focus initially then on the release log, Craig. We'll only look at February, but actually the release log goes all the way back to the beginning of September when we first released Smart Tasks, which was our new feature back in September.
Sorry to interrupt you here, Dave. It is really nice scrolling down through that release log. You get lost sometimes in the development and the day-to-day, and you look and go, blimey, we've got a lot of stuff out here. Sometimes it feels like you're almost treading water and not moving forward on a day-to-day basis. So looking back for that release log is hopefully you guys can see there as well. We're delivering stuff that's of a benefit and that you guys are asking for. Sorry, go on.
So I'm going to take it from the bottom up because these are sort of features in terms of perhaps the most impact they might have. Let's put them in reverse order. Okay, so the first thing to say is that we've got 110 model answer videos for OCR J277 now live in the product. And our ambition is to have a model answer video for every advanced question in the product for every exam board. We've started with OCR J277 because that's the most popular board. So we wanted to get that content out first because it impacts the most students. Not to say that we don't like and support AQA and EdXL as well. Of course we do, but you have to start somewhere. So we've got 110 of those in products. Now, they've been a little bit sort of invisible unless you know where to look. And we've done a little bit of work on that recently. So now you can find the model answer videos if you're a teacher when you're marking or reviewing a task. So if you've set a task with advanced questions in it, you'll notice that the links to the model answer videos are now included in the marking pane, which is handy if you're then reviewing a task with students, because you've got the links then on the board if you wanted to then click on those and show the model answer video that's been recorded. Now, Craig and I haven't recorded these model answer videos. They're done by a chap called Gavin, who joined our team. And so they're produced by him. But they're there and they highlight the command words, they highlight the key aspects of the answer where you're going to attract marks, and we're using the highlighting tools to do that. And there's some additional commentary when it's appropriate as well about how to tackle particular questions and pitfalls to look out for and things like that. So those are available to the teacher on the task marking screen. You might not have noticed that going live because it's a very, very small little feature update. So just so you're aware. And for students, you can see the model answer videos if your teachers have enabled them. That's the first thing they have to make sure they've done for your class. They've got class configuration options where they can toggle certain references on and off. And so providing they've got the model answers switched on, when you go to look at the marking for your tasks, you will see the links to model answer videos against every single advanced question that we've done so far. And as we've said, it's 110 currently only for OCR J277, and that's growing week by week. Incidentally, there are also references against these questions when you're answering them and have provided an answer, both in quiz mode and advanced mode as well. Those have always been there, but now they're available through the task marking and review interfaces as well. So that's quite nice.
Yeah.
Moving on up the list, so we took a look at OCR J277 topic 1.1, which is systems architecture. We got a little bit of feedback from a teacher to say that some of the mark scheme entries were perhaps a little bit beyond what was necessary for GCSE. And admittedly, we did start by writing that content for A-level, and then we ported it across for GCSE, and we did our best to make it fit for purpose. But on reflection, having looked at the specification again in a bit more detail, in conjunction with this teacher, we realized that perhaps there was a little bit too much detail in some of the answers there. So, for example, the memory address register holds an address that's currently being accessed, and that's the sort of level of knowledge you'd expect for GCSE. And we had things in there like holds the value passed from the program counter. It's still accurate, but it's beyond what you actually need to know for J277. So we've just tweaked some of those mark schemes there to make it absolutely fit for purpose. And that's a classic example of how we take feedback from teachers and students. We review what we've done. We don't always agree with the suggestions we've got, but where we do, we then make changes live into the product. It's probably also worth saying, Craig, that teachers and students don't need to do anything to access any of this new content. It just happens automatically. And from time to time, when you log into the product, it will say, hey, good news, there's new content for you. And that happens when we add new questions. We've added some more fairly recently, but it doesn't happen for sort of feature updates and changes to existing content. That just kind of happens without you really knowing about it. So that's quite nice. Moving on up the list, then we've got students can see references and model answer videos automatically in their task feedbacks. I've actually already talked about that. So that's done. And then I guess the big headline feature for February is deadline enforced tasks. So Craig, perhaps you can just sort of tell us what deadline enforced tasks are and why we might need them.
Yeah, just letting me get a little, give your voice a bit of a rest. Yeah, this is one of those ones that we had marked as coming soon, and it's now in. So you've had the ability to set sort of an open-ended task and a task with a deadline, but this is a deadline enforced task. So the idea here is that you want to have an absolute deadline to your task. Maybe it's the night before the homework's due in, or maybe you want to simulate an in-class test, and you want to get the kids sat down, but you want the deadline to be sort of 10 minutes before the end of the lesson. However you wish to use it, whether it's for homework or an in-class mini assessment, you can now set an absolute deadline with a date and indeed a time, right down to the minute if you like. And the students then obviously can start that task, assuming it's been enabled for them, because you can still have the start date on there as well. But the important thing, as the name suggests, once that deadline has passed, the task will be automatically submitted by the system. So there's no concept in this mode. If you use a deadline enforced task of having late tasks, the task will be submitted at that deadline. So great, as we say, for enforcing submission. Well, you didn't do the homework in time and I'm not giving extensions. Or as you say, simulating that in class. Right, I've created you a little 40-minute test. We've got a double lesson. Off you go, everyone. You've got until 5:30. Obviously, we've got the facilities as before of extending individual deadlines to the tasks as well. So you can cater for students that mind a bit of extra time, or if your class all arrives late from PE, bless PE, and I just want to extend the deadline. All that's doable. But the important feature here is, say, when that deadline is hit, the task will be automatically submitted to you. And if they're actually in the middle of the task and about to submit their next question, if that deadline has passed, it will say, this task has now passed the deadline and we have submitted it for you. A surprising amount of work, analysis and gotchas went into this one, wasn't it? We saw it as quite a simple feature. We said to our developer, Mark, you may remember from Unscripted, we just want a deadline. It's easy as that. When the deadline's passed, the task submitted. Simple. Should take you 5 minutes, shouldn't it? He is phenomenally good at analysis, and I don't think either me and Dave are that bad. But it's in. And we've tested it extensively. And actually, Mark was reporting this morning, we've seen some people have started creating the first deadline enforced tasks. It actually went live back on, I want to say, Sunday the 27th. It went live, I think, in the evening.
Yeah, so I think so. Yeah, absolutely. So should we take a look at it in product, just so people know
let me unshare that
what
screen.
we're talking about? Okie dokes. So just let Craig switch the screens
There
there.
you are.
Okay, so I'm logged into a test server here on Smart Revise. I've just clicked on my class and my active tasks, and I'm going to click on new task. And having done that, I can then give the task a name and some optional details. Go on to the next step, choose the topics that I want to select from. I'm just going to select them all. And then what type of experience do I want for my students? So I'm just going to make this a 10 quiz question little test. Incidentally, we do get asked about this from time to time. If your task only contains quiz questions, then it is automatically marked for you, but you just have to go into the marking interface and then commit that to your mark book for it to appear. But you don't actually have to mark it. The system will mark multiple choice questions for you. If your task contains a mixture of things, maybe it's got the quiz and it's got a couple of terms in there and maybe 1 or 2 advanced questions, if it looks a bit like that, then it will still automatically mark the quiz questions for you. But of course, you've then got to go in as a human and mark the other bits and pieces. So if you definitely don't want any marking and you want the system to do it all for you, then make sure you're only choosing the multiple quiz questions. We do get asked quite a lot for, can we set a task for that students can mark themselves? Because of course they can do that through the terms and advanced mode that we've already got, but they can't do that for tasks at the moment. And that's because we saw tasks as something that enables the teacher to sort of simulate maybe end of topic test situations, and they want to get a feeling for student responses as part of formative and summative assessment, rather than something reflective for the student to do themselves. However, we hear you loud and clear, and we know that you want students to be able to self-mark their own tasks as well. And it is something that's on the roadmap, and we'll come back to that when we look at what's ahead a little bit later in this episode. Anyway, so I've chosen the experience. I'm going to save and continue. Something that you might have missed that we've updated fairly recently is you can now drag and drop these questions into a different order. If you want, for example, all your multiple choice questions to appear first, you can do that. Anyway, I'm happy with those. Let's choose next. So here's where the new feature is. Okay, so up till now, you've had allow late submissions so that you can still have deadlines, but a student can miss the deadline and you'll get a little notification on your mark book if that's the case. And then no deadline for submission kind of speaks for itself, really, completely open-ended. Students can submit that whenever they like. But the deadline enforced tasks is the new one here, okay? Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice something's missing. It's like, oh, didn't we have 4 options here? Wasn't there a timed task option, or am I just making that up? No, you're not going mad. There was a timed tasks option, which we are still committed to doing, but as a result of reprioritizing a few things, we've actually decided to put that a little bit lower down in the priority list. So we've taken it off here, so it doesn't say that we're actively working on it, because we're not at the moment, truth be known.
I'm just going to jump in here for a second, Dave, because Unscripted is a great opportunity for you and I to get on our old soapboxes, and I bet you know what I'm going to say. So yes, those eagle-eyed amongst you will remember that when we released tasks, we had no deadline for submission, allow late submission, and then we had deadline enforced and timed with the red text coming soon ... What do I think of the phrase coming soon ... Dave?
Yeah, you absolutely hate it. And you said, I don't want that in product. And we put it in product. And what's the reason you didn't want it in product is because you say it's coming soon. A, what does soon mean? Because that's a bit nebulous. And B, I bet it's not coming soon.
Every product does it, don't they? It's like coming soon. I'm like, unless we're actually in the middle of coding that and we know it's going to go into test soon, I don't want coming soon. And what happened? We've reprioritized, rightly so, based on user feedback and what features people want. And we've decided it's too far down the line. So we've now just hidden it and hoping no one will notice.
Yeah,
we will come back to it, but Yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm interrupting you now. We're going to go back and look at the future roadmap, and you'll see some of the other features we're doing instead. So we haven't totally abandoned the idea of doing these timed tasks, but yeah, that's why that's gone.
No, not at all. But the truth is, you're asking for other features that you really want.
Yeah,
And,
indeed.
why are we prioritizing something we want to do over something that we're being
You're
asked a
asking.
lot for? And that's really kind of what it comes down to. And
Absolutely.
also, when we consider what features we're going to implement, we think about, is this something you can't do in product, in which case we should prioritize it? Or is it something you can do in product, but it requires a bit of a workaround to get there? And if it's kind of technically possible already, but it requires a workaround, then that then becomes a lower priority. So for example, with the timed task, you could simulate this, because what you do is you set a deadline enforced task for the date and time when you want the task to expire. And that really is almost the same as a timed task. And you can give each individual student a slightly different deadline on the active task screen if you want to. So it is possible to do a timed task with deadline enforced tasks. It's just not as intuitive. So we will come back to it for sure,
Yeah.
but you can kind of do it as a bit of a workaround. So deadline enforced tasks, I'm going to just, choose a deadline here. And it's pre-populating some that I had already on my screen, which you can't see, but that's okay. I can just pick something. November 2021 is probably not a great idea. It'll probably tell me that's not possible because that's in the past.
It
But you
will.
can choose when your deadline is. And as Craig says, so I've selected the 5th of April 2022 at 11:31 a.m. So what would happen is at 11:31 a.m. on the 5th of April, if a student's in the middle of a task, as soon as they go to the next question or the close of task, it's going to submit it for them. And if they don't do that, then the automatic scheduler will do it for them. It won't necessarily do it on exactly that second. The scheduler might have a lot of other things that are going on at the moment, and it could take sort of 3 or 4 minutes possibly to actually enforce that deadline. But crucially, if a student is working on it, as soon as they click another button, it will just check whether the deadline has passed, and it will automatically enforce the deadline at that point. So there's no way that your students can accidentally get a little bit of extra time. We've thought about all that. But if there's no manual process that triggers it to check whether the deadline has passed or not, then the automatic scheduler does that as part of an ongoing job, and it won't check every single second, because that's not great for performance. So it does it from time to time. Okay, so that's deadline enforced task, Craig.
Yeah, it's a nice one, that. And as you said, really, you've got your start button there. If I had a double lesson and I wanted to set a time task, I'd just use deadline enforced. My lesson starts at 11. Well, I have 10-15 minutes then to get in, settle down, take a register. So I would create my task maybe at break time before for 11:15, give it a certain amount and give it a deadline of 30-40 minutes, and then get everyone in, get them all logged on, and say, right, that task should be live for you now, guys. If you refresh your task panel, off you go. You've got until, so you effectively have the time task mode. When it comes in, we want to have like a bit of an on-screen clock with a number of minutes in it, and but as Dave said, it's you can effectively do a time task, and we know it's a feature people have been asking for. So what's the next then, Dave? You want to have a little look at what we've got coming up?
Yes, I think so. Let's go back to the roadmap and talk about what's coming next. So this comes with a massive dollop of caveat, okay, that says,
Yes.
look, this is changing all the time. And what we're about to say is not set in stone, but it is currently what we're thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
So we are actively at the moment coding what we have been calling cloned tasks. So this idea that you create a task and then you want to set that task for multiple classes, whether they're your classes or they're shared classes. You want everybody, for example, in year 10 to do exactly the same end of topic test, regardless of what class they're in.
Yeah.
You can't really do that at the moment, or to be precise, you could do it, but it's very cumbersome, because you would have to go in, create a new task for the other class. You then have to choose the same experience that you set for the other class, and then you'd have to manually change all the questions until you got the set that you actually wanted, and it would take you forever, and you would be very, very cross about doing that. So we know this is something that you desperately want to do. So we are actively working on it right now. So the plan will be that when you go through the wizard that I just demonstrated to set a new task, when you get to the end and you choose your students, having done that, it will then say, do you want to assign this task to another class? And if you say yes, it will show you your class, your available classes. You can select one, and then it'll show you the student list for that class, and you can select which students. And having done that, it'll say, do you want to add another class to this? And you can keep going through that for all your shared classes until you've done the ones that you want to do, or there are none left. So that's the one way you can do it. Now, how that actually looks in product, we haven't actually done the interface for it yet, but that's a sort of broad overview of how that will work. But having set a task, you might then think, oh no, I wanted to assign that to more than one class and it's too late. What can I do? That's okay, because you'll be able to go to the other class. You'll be able to say new task, and you'll be able to select a task that's currently belonging to another class as that sort of initial stage in the wizard. If you wanted to just go and copy effectively a task that is already in either in active tasks or in the mark book or in your classes or shared classes. So you'll be able to do it both ways. So we're working on that now. Again, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that we've changed the wording a little bit on this feature. So I just want to be absolutely open and honest with you. The plan was that we would enable you to also share tasks across series. Now, what that means is if you've got a class on the 2022 exam, like your year 11s, and you've got a class on the 2023 exam, in other words, your year 10s, that you would be able to then clone a task between year 10 and year 11. And, you know, it doesn't really matter what the year groups are. It's between one series and another. And that is something we will do in time, but it's a question of, do you want this feature out sooner rather than later? And we're certainly getting the feedback that you want this sooner rather than later. So what we've done is we've split the development of this feature into two parts. We'll deliver the first part because it's a little bit easier, which is just to clone a task between the same year group. And then afterwards, we'll come back to this feature when we've done some of the other priorities, and will enable you then to clone a task across series. So it's something that we'll do, but again, it's just about trying to get new features out to you as quickly as possible. So that's that one. Okay, I'll just carry on then, Craig. So
yeah, go on. I'll say something about the command words when we get there, if you want.
Okay. So independent scrolling of a student answer in the mark scheme. We know this has been really frustrating. Let me explain the problem. When you've got a big high mark question, say 8 marks at GCSE, or a 9 marker at A level, the students write extended prose, and your mark scheme typically will have a dozen entries or more for you to consider. So you've got the problem of a very large student answer and a very large mark scheme, and the two things scroll at the same time. So to scroll down to the bottom of your mark scheme means that you're scrolling down the student answer as well. And that's awkward because the points that the student are making in their answer might be at the bottom of their answer, but they're at the top of the mark scheme, or vice versa, and it becomes a little bit cumbersome. So what we've done, and we've actually been testing this morning, and it works really nicely, is you've now got independent scrolling on the 3 panels. So the student list scrolls completely independently from the student answer, which scrolls completely independently from the mark scheme. And we know that's something you wanted, and it's working beautifully in test, and it's just a question of getting that feature live. We don't put features live sort of ad hoc, because we have to actually take the system down, run the change and any scripts that are required to update things, and then put it live again. We can't do that live in product, because all sorts of chaos could ensue if students are busy answering particular questions at that time, or you're busy marking something at that time. It would be a bit it would be a bit dangerous to do that. So those things don't go live instantly, but we tend to do product updates on a Friday evening, and we give you advance notice of that. So that's something I'm quite excited about, because I have found it personally infuriating not being able to independently scroll those two things. So.
And again, we've had a number of customers that have said that, you know, I'd love these to be separate scroll. They've actually come to multiple people via emails and a couple of tweets, and you know, so we've implemented it. So I'll pick up now, Dave. You've got a rest. So the other two, which we're actively working on right now, 4 is as you'd expect, because Dave said we have 110 model answer videos live, and that's an ongoing thing because we had several separate content creator Gavin working on those. So kind of skip talking about that. But this is an interesting one. Command words exactly match an examination board specification instead of just using the JCQ list. And this is an example of where initial analysis, no matter how good you are at it, is not necessarily the best. We knew from very early on that we wanted to support command words in the system. We understand how important they are to understanding exam questions, teaching students how questions should be answered. That's what they're there for. And when we started the product, we looked at all the command words on JCQ, and also specific command words on the various exam boards, and they all use different ones. And well, of course, 30, 40, well, this is ridiculous. It's never going to work. We'll come up with a generic kind of smart revise set of command words based on the JCQ list, and we came up with 13, and when we justified it to ourselves, and we felt very good about ourselves, and off we went. We've U-turned on that now, and rightly so. And this is a great example of how maybe if we'd done a bit more analysis at the time, we might have thought this, but sometimes you don't. So we're now specifically making sure that command words that appear, for example, in OCR J277 are the command words that you would see in an OCR J277 exam. And if they're not in those, then you won't get them. Now, I should point out, they're pretty good. It's not like all the questions there are wrong. And the command words we were using were using the correct definitions from JCQ, but we're just really fine-tuning that now, and we have found a few little anomalies and discrepancies, and it means as we go forward with the product, and we possibly start looking at supporting other subjects, we can really hone in on how those command words are interpreted, which ones are used. I mean, you've been doing a lot of work on this, Dave. You might be able to give a couple of specific examples, but basically it's one of our key features in this pin sharp focus that we have, and we're just applying that now with our command words at a subject level and at an example level.
Yeah, I think we sort of naively assumed that because JCQ sort of oversee the exam boards, that if JCQ come up with a list of command words, then that's what the exam boards must use. And what they actually do is take those command words, and then they don't use all of them, and they tweak the wording on some of them, and the mark schemes are slightly different, for different command words, etc. And I guess we didn't really sort of notice that too much initially. An example would be, and like Craig says, there's nothing wrong with the questions. The questions are still perfectly valid for revision purposes. But an example might be that a question says, suggest 3 ways that, because suggest is a JCQ command word. But if you look at a particular specification, it might not actually have suggest in the command word list, but instead it has outline. So the question really needs to be outline 3 ways in which. So it doesn't really change the question too much, and those two sort of words are pretty synonymous. But we've gone to the effort of reviewing every single question in the system, and there are over 8,000 at this point. And we've looked at them all, and we've tweaked them so that they exactly match the particular exam board command words. And that's not live yet. That obviously requires an update to quite a few tables in the system. For those of you that understand databases, and particularly A-level students, you should know what we're talking about. So we're going to have to update some tables, and there are some relationships involved there that we need to make sure that we don't break our referential integrity when we do some updates.
You throwing in some theory.
Throwing in a bit of A-level theory for our A-level viewers, yeah. So that we just got to be careful with that. So we'll do that as a sort of a major product update when one of those comes along. So that's that.
Cool.
So at this point, Craig, I'm not going to crystal ball too much, but it's
Okay.
probably helpful just to give the audience a couple of headlines on, okay, what's coming after that, because
next.
we're actively thinking about it.
Yeah. It's worth just doubling down. Dave said, obviously, all this stuff is subject to change. It's fair to say that when you're looking at this, roadmap, if it's under the what we're working on now, then there's a pretty damn good bet you're getting it, because that literally means we are actively doing it. Either Mark is coding it, or Dave and I in the middle of design and doing it. So unless we hit a major roadblock that makes us rethink and put it on the back burner, this stuff is fairly safe. The stuff that's next is stuff which is a high priority to us, because it's come from typically yourselves, or it's a refinement of something we've been thinking about. But as it says, the order of implementation is subject to change. So just a big caveat, we may not get all these features done necessarily in this order. Some may evolve and become part of other work, but these are certainly at the top of our list of things we want our developer working on next. I think that's probably a good way of phrasing it.
Yeah, definitely. Some of these get subsumed into bigger pieces of work, which is why they can sort of disappear off this list. It's not that we've forgotten about them. It's just that we've decided we could do something even bigger or better, and it becomes a longer term ambition. So it sort of disappears off the list temporarily. But yeah, these are things that we've had conversations about. We just haven't necessarily, we haven't started development on them, but we've probably analyzed the problem, we've probably designed some solutions, done some mock-ups of interfaces and that kind of thing. So we know what we want, but development capacity is limited, and so you have to do one thing at a time. And the reason the order of this changes, apart from the fact that we might subsume something into a bigger feature, as I've already said, is for the reason that Craig's already articulated, which is it depends how much feedback we get from teachers. If we get a lot of teachers saying, please, we want clone task, then, it starts to bubble up the list and become more important. So, feel free to drop us an email to tell us what's important to you, but we think we've got a fair idea, because we do still teach. I know people think we don't. So let's have a quick look then, Craig. Number 1 and 2, just to sort of give some brief headlines. Shopping basket experience for purchasing course vouchers. The truth of the matter is we are getting quite a few support emails where teachers have accidentally bought the wrong series. So they've tried to buy vouchers for year 11, for example, and they've accidentally bought them for year 10 or vice versa. That happens quite a bit. So we're just trying to eliminate the human error as much as we can. And it's our fault entirely because of how we've designed the interface. It should be more obvious to you what it is you're actually buying. So we take that on board. It's not your fault, it's ours. And we're trying to make the shopping basket experience much more like how you buy things from other online retailers. So we've already done the sketches for that. And number 2, which I'm really excited about, is support for business studies. So if you're a teacher of computer science and business studies and you're watching this, we've heard you loud and clear. You want this product for business studies too. We are actively working on the content of that. And to be absolutely honest with you, we're not, because we're not business studies specialists. We've got a couple of people, Amy and Debbie, who are actively working on the content now. They're both very experienced teachers, decades of experience of teaching business studies behind them, and examiner experience too. So we're very currently active examiner as well. So we're very confident with the quality of the content that we're going to get out there. And we've got dozens and dozens of questions already queued up, ready to go into the system. The truth is, we're not going to drip feed these out. We're going to do a sort of big bang release on business studies, because it does have to fit in with other sort of marketing strategies and things as well, as you might imagine. And so we're looking at a soft launch, and don't hold me to this because it could change, okay? But we're looking at a soft launch date at the moment of September for business.
Oh, he's gone for it. September.
Yeah, well, we talked about this internally, and we've said if you don't put a date to these things, then you don't have the objective and ambition to try and hit it. It's better to have a date and have something to aim for than to think, oh well, it doesn't really matter when it goes live. So we're sort of saying to ourselves internally, 1st of September, we'd like to get business studies out there, but it is dependent on an awful lot of things. And it may well be that we only support EdXL business studies out of the gate, because that's the course that's got the most students studying it, and other courses might come on board later. It really depends on capacity. So it may not come for the 1st of September. Like I say, don't hold me to it. That might slip. But our ambition is to try and get EdXL GCSE business studies there for you for September.
Marvellous. Did you want to mention any others, or just leave that there now?
I don't think so. No, people can go and have a read for themselves. They're all subject to change.
And there's things we've been talking about as well. Student self-marking is there. As you notice, time tasks. We promised we hadn't forgotten about it. It's there. So, you know, the peer marking of tasks. So it's all there. And I'll just pop that URL up again quickly. I lost my cursor for a moment there. Yeah, smartadvice.craignagger.org/road-map is where you go.
And these are the things we're prepared to share with you.
Yes, that's true.
I'm quite happy to say that we met as a team in person a couple of weeks ago with a huge piece of paper, an electronic piece of paper, but a huge piece of paper where we literally put every single thing we could think of that we wanted to do with Smart Advice on that piece of paper. And it was littered with things that were going to take our development way into, you know, dare I say 2024, 2025, before we even sort of run out of things that we would like to do. So a lot of those are, you know, things that we're thinking about at the moment. We don't want to share them with you because they could change. They may never happen. And we haven't really decided with a lot of them how they would actually be implemented. But just want to kind of reassure you really that this is the tip of the iceberg. And I think we're going to look back in 3 years' time at Smart Advice and say, wow, you know, how far has this product come since its release? So there you go. Every month, something new.
Exciting stuff. Well, thanks for joining us, guys. So check out the roadmap, keep an eye on what we're doing, and we'll see you again next week for another Craig and Dave Unscripted. Bye-bye for now.